Welcome, my friends, to our seance where we try to commune with the spirit of Agatha of blah. Fuck. Let me do that again. Blah 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 blah. That's a. If we were still doing bloopers to send to Jeremy, that would have been one of them. All right. Welcome, my friends, to the special edition of the Fake Nerd Podcast Cine-Files, where today myself, Brandon T. McClure, and Sparkz will be doing a seance to commune with the spirit of Agatha Christie, to see how she likes the adaptation of her book, A Hallowe'en Party. But they changed the title to A Haunting in Venice. Now let us virtually join hands and close our eyes.
Hold on. Wait, can you raise your arm up a little bit more, Sparkz?
Yeah, the other arm.
The other one. Wait, here. All right, there we go. All right, Ben.
Okay, there. Yep, there we go. All right. Okay.
Audio listeners are so amused.
Yes, they are. Okay, let's start with it. Anyways, hey guys, we're here to talk about A Haunting in Venice, one of the newest Kenneth Branagh Hercule Poirot film, the third one of his. I guess I don't know what to. It's not really a renaissance, but it's more of a just him having fun with this character because
it's him doing what he's always wanted to do, I guess, because that's what it feels like.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm joined with Brandon T. McClure and Sparkz. So, guys, what'd you guys think of A Haunting in Venice?
Well,
Brandon, you got the credits.
You did say it was Kenneth Branagh already. It's directed by Kenneth Branagh, just like the first two. Also written by Michael Green, just like the first two. This time they are not adapting. They are not straight adapting a book, as was Murder on the Orient Express or Death on the Nile. They've taken some liberties, but it is mostly an adaptation of Hallowe'en Party, written by Agatha Christie. To answer your question, Ben, I quite liked this one. I like it about as much as Murder on the Orient Express. I believe I'm the person who liked Murder on the Orient Express the most of this group. But I thoroughly enjoyed this one. I had a great time, especially after Death on the Nile, which I am the only person to have seen that movie in this group. And boy, howdy, is that a terrible movie. So I am so happy to have a good one.
Yeah, Brandon always quantifies it like, I'm the only person who sat through that movie, and I'm like, the rest of us didn't because you told us not to.
Yeah.
I don't want you to. Don't do it.
We were actively warned by Brandon when that movie came out.
Be real. Ryan was not seeing it anyway.
Yeah, Ryan wasn't going to see it anyway, but he straight, because myself and my fiance were like, okay, maybe we'll go see, because I saw Murder on the Orient Express with Brandon, and I also really enjoyed it. That was actually my very first time viewing, because the Murder on the Orient Express, because I know that book has been adapted quite a few times over the years. So that was my first iteration of it. And I hear about a sequel, Death on the Nile. I'm like, oh, cool, because I like Kenneth Branagh as Hercule Poirot. The mustache is amazing. And I'm like, yeah, I'd like to go see it. But then the second Brandon said, don't go see Death on the Nile because it is a terrible movie, I'm like, you know what? I trust this guy. He knows his movies. So I'm going to stay far, far away from it.
Bold. He knows his movies.
You do.
I appreciate that. Sparkz, what did you think about this one?
I think it's unquestionably the best of the three.
Yeah, I second that.
Pretty strongly. I mean, obviously I say that without saying Death on the Nile, but like, do I need to see Death on the Nile to know that's true?
No, and actually you don't need to see Death on the Nile to understand this film. He does retire at the end of Death on the Nile, and that's really the only thing that makes that kind of builds off of this film, and otherwise you don't really give a shit.
It didn't matter. Like, he could have retired. This could be your first one, and that fact wouldn't matter. Like, you get start, like, okay, like, you get established, like, he's good at this, but he's retired. Like, you could start here, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Which is one of the nice things about doing the Poirot stories, is that there's not such, like, strict, like, continuity for him as a person that you need to have seen previous entries. Like, you could just go in on a good mystery.
A lot of his mentality of, I will say, a lot of his mentality of, everyone is evil. This isn't, there's no good, like, this whole, like, kind of idea that he has in this movie coming into it, where he's like, there's really no good in this world, and I just want to be left alone, and blah, blah, blah. That all kind of comes from Book's murder and from the last movie. In Death on the Nile, his friend from the first movie is murdered. by the villain of that film, and that is kind of interesting. It does kind of heighten the experience in a way that like you still get the context, but like if you've seen the context, it does kind of elevates the wrong word, but it does kind of help a little bit to get kind of into Poirot's mindset. And I did appreciate that is there, but as Sparkz is saying, there's no it's very standalone. You just really jump in.
Yeah.
Also, more when go ahead, Ben.
No, I was going to say to add to that, because he does mention in the very beginning of the film, he also mentions that he lived through 2 wars, and who knows what kind of atrocities he saw, both World War I and World War II. And also, just FYI, I forgot to say at the very beginning, full spoilers, BT dubs.
Well, oh yes, full spoilers. At this point, probably
I think more what I want to emphasize is that this movie in particular does a good job of leaving you emotionally connected to the characters. It's not relevant to know anything before. Like I can connect just as well to Poirot in the place that he is through the material they give me here. I'm sure it'd be like, I know the specific reason now if I watch Death on the Nile, but like without the specificity, the emotional value of it is the same.
Right.
Which is a credit to what this film's doing. And I think, as you just mentioned, Ben, with the war stuff, being so deeply a post-war story is one of the reasons I like this movie so much, because that's such a factor at play for so many different people. It's that, and it's been a while, but comparing to Murder on the Orient Express, one of my things was I didn't think that was very good self-direction from Kenneth Branagh. Was one of my big problems with it. I think he got lost in the sauce on directing himself and wasn't as strong-handed with the rest of the cast. That was a good cast, but the direction was lacking. I think the direction is much, much better here, both from a style standpoint and from a focus on the whole cast. I don't feel like it's the Poirot show featuring. I feel like it's very well balanced and really utilizing the talents of everyone that's there, which I know is something I didn't feel like was done fully in Murder on the Orient Express.
Yeah, I would agree with that pretty much wholeheartedly. I find it so fascinating how Kenneth Branagh directed this film, in the sense that we talked about when we were able to talk about the trailers, like it doesn't feel like a traditionally Kenneth Branagh directed film. The way he's able to edit the film, I'm sure he's not the editor, but like the editing of the film is much different than the first two. The angles he uses much different. Like everything here is everything here, it feels like a different director has come in, but it's still Kenneth Branagh. And that kind of, I appreciate that kind of like dedication to be like, I want to do this as a horror movie, but in order to do that, I can't direct it the same way I've directed the first two.
Yeah.
So that kind of like allowing him to be malleable, to create something, to go out of his comfort zone and do something. And I think it's wholeheartedly successful.
There's a really, and I'm sure I 100% know for a fact Kenneth Branagh has seen this movie. There's a older film called Don't Look Now, which is a classic film that's shot almost entirely in Venice. It is a light horror film, more kind of suspense than horror, but a horror. And there's a lot of wanting to capture the sense of that period, which that's like the 60s, 60s, 70s, that period of filmmaking in this style of horror film. And I feel like there's a lot of that. There's a lot of creative choices here. I think that's the thing, is that as a director, he feels less asleep at the wheel to me than I think he kind of did. Not asleep at the wheel, but like he was only very creative, I thought, as a performer in Murder, and less so as a director. I think he was very straightforward as a director with Murder. And again, I can't really reference Death on the Nile. This feels like a lot of creative directive decisions, which doesn't leave his performance lacking either. But he feels far more engaged as a director this time around.
And he's able to be, what's so interesting about that is that, I do think there's something to be said about about what you're saying with the fact that in Murder he's not um he's mostly focused on himself, on his own performance, and here he's able to be vulnerable in a way that he hasn't been in the first two films, while also doing this kind of like intentional directing that I didn't know he had it in him, and I think he delivers probably his best performance as Poirot in this film.
Yeah.
um and it's also his best directed. Like it's quite a triumph, like, on all feats, like, and I think probably he's able to deliver his best performance because he's also allowing the other actors to deliver good performances. He's being, a much more malleable director in that, and performer in that way, allowing other people to take the spotlight away from him at times. And it creates such an engaging mystery because of that, because we are so engaged in what everyone else is doing at the times that they're doing. And while Poirot is still the main character of this story, everyone else feels fully fleshed out and like they are full realized characters on their own.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. I think that that's, whether it's comfortability with the performance at this point, where he feels like he's more confident about Poirot as a performer, so he doesn't have to think about it as much, which allows him to think more as a director, or it's because of the change in genre, because of the change in setting, that brought out something more creative. It could be a combination. Because of the nature of the story, he's allowed to give a more subtle performance at times, not the whole time, but at times, that I don't think has been allowed. Again, I don't know about Death on the Nile, but certainly not in Murder, not as much. That subtlety wasn't as present. And it could be a combination of all these things, but whatever it is, it really, really works here. This is the most that like Kenneth Branagh's character Poirot and his direction for the films has like really sung together as a whole piece. And it is like sharing in that performance with the other actors that I feel like, whether it's how he's interacting with them as an actor, or it's how he must have considered them more in the direction and encouraged them to go certain places. Notably, almost every actor in here has a scene where they're either crying or almost crying. Like every single one of them is given like a really full moment, and I'm like, you don't get a full performance moment like that unless the director is like pushing for it and championing it. So there's just seems a lot more consideration for that kind of thing brought to this piece.
It's so interesting that he decided to do this as a horror film, just in general. Like I'm not familiar with Halloween Party. I think it's a short story. I don't think it's a full length book. But it's so interesting that he approached this as I want to know. I wish we could have gotten press for this movie. And it's such a shame that we couldn't, because like, obviously it's great that at this point that we're recording, both strikes have been resolved with looking like great deals for both the WGA and SAG-AFTRA. I want to hear what Kenneth Branagh has to say about this film, about the decision to turn this into a horror film, because I'm so curious why he wanted to go so different than the first two films. Was it because he's heard the criticisms and he thought this was the only way that this could happen, or was it because he was genuinely intrigued by doing something challenging? I really want to know what that is, because it is so fascinating. This film, just from the jump when this was announced, I was fascinated by it because I was like, why?
Yeah,
I'm intrigued, but like, why?
When I first saw the trailer for this, and it's like, the title, or even when I first saw the poster and it was just a haunting of Venice, I'm like, okay, cool, spooky movie set in Venice. And then I see Hercule Poirot, Kenneth Branagh's character, I'm like, no way.
That's my favorite. It's my favorite trailer of the year is when it's a horror movie and then Poirot is the jump scare of the movie, because you're like, what the hell?
It's not just a jump scare. It's the fact that it's like, you're like, is this like a crossover? I honestly thought that this was like a different crossover. This wasn't a Hercule Poirot movie. It was just a movie that Hercule Poirot just happened to be in. I don't know, but it was just because the whole time I watched the trailer, I was like, I'm like, okay, cool. Spooky movie, seance, ghost stuff, Michelle Yeoh, yay. And then you see Kenneth Branagh. I'm like, no way. this isn't what I. And then he's like, no, that there's a murder. I was like, oh shit. And and to echo what Sparkz said earlier, that I also think this is the best one of, as also as someone who's never seen Death on the Nile. Between this and Murder on the Orient Express, I think Murder on the Orient Express is a good introduction to the character of Hercule Poirot, but Haunting in Venice is peak. It is. I feel bad for Kenneth Branagh of trying to follow this one up, because I think this one is fantastic.
Yeah,
I hope he follows it up with something just as ambitious.
Mm-hmm.
I do too.
I don't know what that would be, but I would like to see it.
Yeah, like if he has the opportunity to make another, which he might not, because this just didn't do well, unfortunately.
Yeah, shame. It's the best one.
Yeah, but if he is able to follow it up, I do hope he's doing something that engages him just as creatively, because whether or not it was a response to diminishing criticism post Death of the Nile specifically, or someone suggesting, hey, you should do horror, or he just really wanted to. However he ended up there, he clearly liked getting to do something different. Like, you don't get something so visually distinct unless the director is like activated by the material that they're able to play with. And that really, it's very clear here that while I believe that Branagh has had a passion for doing the Poirot stories, this is the first time that I feel like I, as an audience, have felt he has a passion for making a movie that is alongside the passion for the Poirot stories. Again, like kind of going back to, I think Murder on the Orient Express has a really good performance of Poirot in a not my favorite directed film, where I think like the balance is off in where his focus is. We kind of went over that. And I think here you have like strong passion for the character and strong passion for filmmaking that are really singing together. And the physical setting of Venice brings out so much of so many different parts of the film. Getting to shoot parts of it in Venice, it looks gorgeous.
Spooky as hell. Like,
yeah, you could tell it's filmed in Venice because you could see the bridge where spoilers for Mission Impossible, but Elsa dies.
Yeah. Yeah, Venice is gorgeous, and when they're able to shoot it, like this movie looks visually beautiful. Whether it's the night shots inside the house or daytime out in Venice, or like the heading of the like vintage masks on the kids to go to the Halloween party, like it's very strong. It's very good. I really, really like it.
Yeah.
One of the things I love about this movie the most is how it's a really good Halloween movie. And I'm not saying that just because it's set on Halloween, it's like, because like you have movies like Halloween Town or even Nightmare Before Christmas, even where it's like Halloween is a centric thought process. It's a central theme of the film. Whereas in this one, it's like, yeah, it's set on Halloween, but it's a spooky night. You got a ghost story, a seance gone wrong, a murder mystery. The whole thing just oozes all this Halloween, essentially the Halloween vibes, if that makes any sense.
What I think you're picking up on was so interesting about what you're saying, that it's classic Halloween. It's not Halloween as it became, where it's like the idea like, oh, this is the time of year when the boundaries between the human and the spirit world are thinnest, so it's easier for Michelle Yeoh as the person doing the seance to commune with the spirits. And I think it's such an interesting approach because it's so classic, and I think that's what you're picking up on, because it is Halloween centered, it is Halloween thematically, but as it existed almost 100 years ago at this point, not necessarily as it exists now.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. And I just love how this film unintentionally became a great Halloween film that I would want. And it's scary enough that it won't give me nightmares, but it's spooky enough that the whole time, that when I was watching this movie in the theaters, I was so happy. I was like, this is a great Halloween film. And this is a perfect movie to watch during the Halloween season. If you want something, I don't want to say horror light, but at least something that's scary enough that will give you that good, like, ooh, spooky stuff, but it's not like utterly terrifying, you know?
Yeah. Um, I really like the opening where we introduced to Poirot. As with this bodyguard, he's not he's got people like lined up in
Very
his house.
aggressive bodyguard.
Yeah, or
Yeah.
he's got people,
the guy off the bridge.
he's got people lined up, but he's not taking any calls. He's like, I'm not doing any cases anymore. He's still the world famous Poirot, but he's retired. He's done. I don't want to deal with any of this anymore because I don't want to have to go into the mind of evil anymore. Is his whole kind of thing. And until he's approached by someone he thinks is a friend, which is Tina Fey's character.
Mm-hmm.
And something that I really like about the Tina Fey character and the bodyguard is how tragic they end up becoming, because it's revealed that they're working together later on in the film, and they were working with Michelle Yeoh's character, and they did it they didn't intentionally try to hurt Poirot, but Poirot is hurt by this. Because Tina Fey is like, everyone's selfish, even you're selfish, and Poirot is like, I don't want to live in that world anymore, and it's such a tragic kind of moment for Poirot, kind of to see these people that he considered were friends, to kind of betray him. I really appreciate how we set up Tina Fey's character and the bodyguard, how we get, there's hints that they're both kind of a little bit too familiar with Michelle Yeoh's character, a little too familiar with the house. Like when the bodyguard opens and gets the phone.
I thought Tina Fey's finding the bunny moment, I was like, that's really on the nose. Like,
yeah. And so like there's hints about it, and until you get to the reveal where even Poirot, he had realized it early on, but he didn't want to believe it for a moment. He's like, I have to reveal that you guys betrayed me, and like it's really sad for him, and I it's a really good moment for him. It's a really good introspective moment, and it's really good performancing, and it's really good like setup, and all just like solid stuff.
Oh yeah,
I like the way the mystery unfolds and everything, but to me that was a better reveal than the murder reveal.
I agree.
Which I don't think is a problem with the movie, I'll say, because I think that the movie's not doing, I don't think the movie's doing a bad job with the murder reveal. I just think that the movie did the correct thing of leaving enough clues that, like, for pretty much for myself and everyone else I knew who was watching, everybody knew who the killer was about halfway through the movie. Like it was pretty clear, but like it's because the clues were present enough that it made sense. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with that.
No, I think the fun of a murder mystery is that you should be able to solve it.
But I think that's why the Tina Fey and the bodyguard reveal is good, because not every piece of that was obvious.
Yeah.
And like the way that that's tied more centrally to the emotion of the characters. You know, like the murder reveal is shocking, but like most of the characters you're following, it's not a personal emotional thing.
Yeah.
This is.
Yeah. That's what I like so much about it, because the moment, it's almost devastating. Like when it's revealed that it's the mom who's the murderer, with unintentional murderers, like she didn't mean to kill her daughter.
Well, the part that I think is the most brutal about that reveal, because we're talking about it, is the other woman, whose name I forget, who
the nun,
she's actually
the nun turned nanny,
technically kills her.
Yes.
But didn't know, and the horror and pain that she feels at that revelation, that she didn't know, but technically it was her.
Yeah.
Olga, I think it's Olga Semenov.
Right.
Yeah, it kind of goes to what the theme of the film is for Poirot, which is like the idea that like he doesn't want to live in a world of evil anymore, which is why he retired. He talks about it a lot, like evil is real and I don't want to be in that world anymore. And so he has this moment where he has to kind of like reconcile with the fact that he is once again staring down evil, but in different ways. And accidental murder is not something that he thought he would solve. Right. And he has to kind of reconcile with that. He has to reconcile with people being very selfish towards him. He has to reconcile with a mom who is literally insane at this point. insane with grief, and the idea that she didn't want to lose her child, and I really like how they weave the central theme of this for Poirot into all these characters, how they represent different things that Poirot is going through while also being their own characters. This is Michael Green also wrote Death on the Nile, but there's something so different about the way he's writing this film that feels so much more alive and so much more thematically rich than even the past two. And as much as I like Murder on the Orient Express, which I do a lot, I don't think it's quite as thematically rich as this one is. You can really mine some stuff out of this film that's not quite on the surface.
One of the things I've been chomping at, not chomping at the bit, but one of the things that when I was watching this movie and it made me just think about it, and I know Sparkz might get mad at me with this analogy, but it felt like a really, really good Scooby-Doo episode. And there's an explanation for that. So Brad is just throwing his thing
I would
in.
like to preface to anybody watching this review who has not watched anything we've ever done, he has never seen an episode of Scooby-Doo.
That is a lie. Yes, I have.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I have seen Scooby-Doo. I've seen episodes of Scooby. Not one. I've seen I've seen quite a few, and I even watched a few of the movies when they aired on Cartoon Network. I just don't remember which ones, but I know I've seen it. Anyways, back to my point. Obviously, in every episode of Scooby-Doo, there's a really good explanation, but throughout the episode or throughout the movie, you always get that sense of, but what if it's real?
Oh,
As in,
sure. I was
but
going to
what
touch on
if
this
the
too.
monster? But what if the ghost is real? The monster is real. You know, the thing that you just can't explain.
That's a very 90s era change. Everything pre-90s that's not really part of Scooby-Doo.
Okay.
Just to be clear. Clear. But I know where you're going and I like it. But like that was a 90s era interpret shift.
Okay, so I watched a lot of Scooby-Doo. I watched Scooby-Doo in the 90s. But my point being is that throughout this whole film, when Kenneth Branagh is going through his hallucinations, where he's seeing the ghosts, he's seeing the children, and of course, because this whole thing is like, this is all fake, this isn't real. Like the first scene when they go into the seance room and he pulls the guy out of the chimney, I thought was fantastic.
Yeah.
I was like, haha, gotcha. But then, like the reveal that he was poisoned by the honey, and he was seeing hallucinations, and that was able to connect the dots. But I still love how throughout the whole film, even though it is explained, you're still thinking, but what if? And there's a great scene there's a great part at the end of the movie which still gives the what if part.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right about that. I wanted to bring that up too. I'll talk about the I want to, because you brought up the ending just now, I'll just say, like, I also really love that. The fact of, like, was that an hallucination? Like, Poirot was like, it was a hallucination, and was like, you probably worked through it by the time that happened. And why did she see it? Why did the mom supposedly see it? Like, she reacts like she saw it. Like she saw
Not
it
just
too.
saw it, felt it.
Felt it. So, like, what? And she wasn't on honey. Like, she wasn't hallucinating all this stuff. Like, so was that real? Was that really her daughter come back from the grave? I really left ambiguous, because, like, Poirot is not a world where the supernatural is real, but you can play with it. You can create this idea like, oh, it's the honey. It's the hallucination in the honey that's making him see what he thinks are spirits and little girls and things like running around the house, and like that's, and all these noises, and like you hear like the wood paneling hitting the bottom of the floor, and that's where like the knocking is coming from the basement. But that moment is very much like, yeah, but what if there was something more? And I really liked that.
It's one of the things that I really wanted the film to do from the start when the marketing came out, because I knew it was going to be a murder mystery thing, and I'm like, I really hope they do that thing where they leave just like that little bit of like, but was it a ghost?
Yeah.
And like I love that kind of stuff, and I think like more to the point, I like that. I like the thing with the mom and everything. That's the part where like you can be like, is it the honey, or has he not worked it out through his system and everything? But the cheeky one that I really like is the last moment, which is when the saucer is halfway off the table, just like it was in her room at the very end of the movie. And
yeah, because he moved
it back over, and I'm like, yeah, okay, movie, I get you. I see you. That's cute.
Yeah, I like that too. I really So Poirot is a really fun and eccentric character, and I think that the movie wisely has him solve a very easy mystery in the beginning. That Ben already talked about, which is the seance. How is the seance working? And he very quickly, like, I know exactly what's happening. I know who these people are. There's someone in the chimney, and it like rips the dude out of the chimney. And I think that's a really smart move to be like, especially if you've never seen a Poirot movie before, this guy's really good at what he does.
Yeah.
And then what happens when he's faced with something that doesn't make any sense?
Right.
Mhm.
I really like also, he has this excellent speech, mini speech, where he's talking with, I think, Tina Fey, but I don't remember if it's Tina Fey or Michelle Yeoh. But he's talking with them and he's saying like, yes, what a gift it would be to know that there is something, because if there is something after, then all of it is, real. My God, like, all of everything that comes after is wonderful and we can believe in it. And he's like, but that's just not true.
Mhm.
And I really like the way that he illuminates on like, what a wonderful, like, he's like, you have no idea how much I would love to be convinced.
Yeah.
I would love to be convinced that there is something after. I
Yeah.
know that was really good.
It is really good. He's got a lot of really good speeches in this film, and he talks to I like that because you brought up with Tina Fey. We forgot to mention he's got like kind of a partnership with Tina Fey. Tina Fey is kind of Agatha Christie in this film.
Sure.
She's a author who has written about Poirot, and she's a murder mystery author. And she's the reason why Poirot is famous, is because of a book that she wrote about him. And he trusts her. And at the time, he makes her his partner. When he makes her his partner, he knows that she's not saying everything, but he's still like, I know I can trust you. I'm in a house full of people I cannot trust, including you, but I know I can trust you enough to help me with some of these clues. So
Right.
let's partner up and do this. I really appreciate that because it creates this kind of like, I think Poirot is always in a position where he can't trust anybody in all the murders, but there's something different about here where it just feels more heightened, because here he's just like, not only I can't trust anybody, but there's something else happening here that I can't quite put my finger on. I can't
Sure.
trust myself either.
Right.
I know in Death on the Nile and Murder on the Express, I know I can trust myself, but I don't know if I can here.
Mhm.
I think there's some really interesting stuff to be mined from this film. I really like this movie.
Yeah,
No, it's a good one. It's a really good one. Go ahead, Ben, if you have something.
One of the things when I was watching this movie is, I think because when I came into it, I had Orient Express on the mind, and the conclusion of that film is essentially everyone who was a suspect had a hand in the killing of Johnny Depp's character the whole time. Like, everyone was the killer in that movie.
That's the twist of the film, is that everyone was the killer.
Whereas this one, part of me was trying to, like, because I didn't get that it was the mom who did it. I knew the mom was kind of sus the whole movie, but the whole time I'm trying to piece together. But what I also like about this movie is that it's not everyone helped do it. It's that, everyone had a connection to her in some.
Everyone was
to the
kind of
victim.
complicit. Everyone was kind of complicit in a way that they weren't aware of.
Yeah, but they didn't all like band together and say, let's do the murder. It was like, let's band together to either expose, get rich, or cover up.
Like the dad was not, he was not like one of the, I really like the kid, by the way. There's a kid in this film. He's great. We haven't really talked about him. But his dad,
the doctor,
is the doctor. He's suffering from PTSD. At the time it was called shell shock. And because of that, he didn't want to become this kind of like house doctor for this girl, but he was kind of coerced into doing it.
He didn't want to go back.
He didn't want to go back
because he was the family doctor before the war.
Yeah.
And then he went to the war, and when he came back, they asked, but he loved the mom. So he did it, and he shouldn't have.
It became very problematic because of that. But his son found out about the honey poisoning and was blackmailing him, but the mom thought it was the doctor, and it becomes like this kind of like tragic thing where like the son accidentally gets his dad killed because he was trying to protect him. And like that's where all the money went, because the family has no more money. It was because of all this blackmail. yeah, it's all such an interesting like web the film weaves with different mysteries that are all kind of stacked on top of each other, but all kind of relate to the same thing.
Mhm.
Um, it's quite well structured in that
It
Yeah, I
way.
really
definitely
like
yeah.
the emotional relationship between the doctor and his son.
Me too.
And that little boy is very good.
Mhm.
Like really good. Poirot Jr.
Yeah, basically.
I thought I like I was prepared for Poirot to be like, you will be my ward. I will teach you to mustache. Um
You see
Full
him, he's
grown
like 14,
mustache.
like he's like what is he, like 9 years old in this movie? He's 10 years old. He has a mustache already.
no, he's got the little wisps, like the little pencil thin one. Yeah.
No, he spirit gums a mustache on.
No,
Yeah.
he does like because like they're not that far away from like old Hollywood style. So like he just does the little like draws it on just a little
Oh,
pencil.
sure, yeah.
Yeah.
But like Poirot like clocks it, like he's got the same kind of like um OCD. I guess he's just got a heightened OCD that he has, which is pretty cool and creates this kind of connection between Poirot and the kid.
Yeah. Um, I really like that. I really love the scene where the doctor gets to tell Poirot about the war, and it's something you can again like Branagh bringing subtlety to the performance without really saying a lot. You know, he's thinking about seeing the exact same things in war.
Yeah.
And that again, like being this post-war story, being very effective, whether it is like because to one extent or another, everything happening with a lot of the characters is a post-war thing. This whole Halloween party thing that sets up the reason that they're there, the assistance to her, to Michelle Yeoh's character, they're there because of post-war reasons. The way that Venice is celebrating Halloween is a post-war thing. Even the way that the mom ends up needing to have the daughter with her is in response to like post-war changes of what's happening with her career and what she needs, and like so everybody's kind of in this reactionary period of post-war to like varying degrees, and I think that's really effective as a setting as well.
Yeah, I do too. The opening kind of like shadow puppet
Oh, so good.
story. Yeah, I really like how that's filmed, how that's done. I'm always a fan of the kind of shadow puppet thing. We saw it in Candyman a couple of years back,
Mhm.
which I thought was really cool. Um, so it's very effective as kind of like a horror storytelling device to like put out some exposition for the setting,
Yeah.
creating this idea that this was what was it, an orphanage during the war?
Yes.
Yeah. So it creates this it's the child's something. I forget the name, but like what it is that they're saying it is like, who it murders, how it leaves its mark. It's all like a part of that spooky ghost story, which again, like ties back into why Ben says this is an effective Halloween movie. Is that she's trying to play off that this ghost story is baked into this building. And like it is this one that they tell the story of, and that's what really took her daughter. That's what's taken all of them. But it doesn't, hold any
Now,
water.
now because it's been a while since I've seen this movie. I want to clarify something. Michelle Yeoh, Tina Fey, and the bodyguard, they were working together, but they didn't know what the mom was doing. They
Right.
weren't aware of that, right?
Right.
So they wanted to know. Oh, right, because the bodyguard was the first officer on the scene when the daughter died, and he wanted Poirot's help to get the mom because he knew something was up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he wanted he wanted to revisit it because he thought Poirot could see something he couldn't.
Right.
Yeah. He didn't know it was the mom.
Right.
But he knew something was off, and he felt bad because that's like he says like, you have a last case. I'm sure you had a last case too when you stopped being an officer. Is what he says to Poirot, and so he asked him, what was your last case? And his last case was this because he couldn't. It was the daughter. That lingered on him in a bad way.
Yeah.
So yeah, his angle is very. It's nasty in a sense to do it to Poirot, but it's very altruistic of like, I want to get you there because like I know you're going to solve this in a way I couldn't.
Yeah.
Right. But it doesn't. But the reason why Poirot is betrayed by it, and there's kind of some of him. He kind of like appreciate, like not really appreciate, but like he understands what the officer is doing. But Poirot has been very clear, like he doesn't want to be in this world anymore. And so that really kind of hurts him, that this person that he trusted would like force him back into this world.
Yeah. But he's also on better terms with the bodyguard at the end of the movie.
Yeah, because like Poirot kind of like he realizes that not everyone in the world is evil because this murder was an accident. Not necessarily, but like the person who actually did the quote unquote murdering did not know that's what they were doing. And so he kind of like has this new lease on the world and decides to take cases again. It creates this kind of like happy ending where he's like where he starts to solve the dude who's like, who was it? Like his like some curse on his family.
He thought there was a curse on his family, but it was the doctor who was killing his family off one by one.
Yeah, and he's like starting to solve it. It's a good scene. The end.
Yeah. He's and he says with Tina Fey at the end that he's like, because she's saying you're a believer now, and he's much more valuing what they have, and he's like ghosts aren't real, but our memories are the real ghosts. And we have to live with them, and like taking in that moment and letting it go, and the new value he has for life because of it. I think that's all done very well in the film.
Yeah. I love how this movie doesn't make Poirot 100% like big time believer, but I do love how he kind of looks at life in a different way. Like when we first see him in the movie, I don't want to say he's sulking away. He's just tired. He's just a guy trying to enjoy his retirement, but he's the world famous detective. So he has a line of people outside of his door trying to get his attention. Like we mentioned earlier about how his bodyguard pushes a guy off a bridge, which is hilarious. But then at the end of the movie, I really enjoy how he's like, yes, he is a cynic, but at the end of the movie, yes, he's not much of a asshole of a cynic, if that makes sense. Like
he's much more willing to accept, because the consensus after Death on the Nile and where we meet him here is that he is just done with the human species. He is like, they're all evil and I don't want to deal with them anymore. I don't want to be in the world of evil anymore.
Yeah.
But now he's more willing to believe that not everyone is. There is good in the world and it can be protected. And also ghosts, question mark?
Yeah. Going back to the shadow play bit, one of my favorite lines in the movie is there, which is when Poirot's asking Tina Fey's character if the story is too scary for the little ones. And she says, we tell scary stories to make the world less scary. And I thought that was a really good line.
That was.
Yeah, me too.
That was a good line.
Yeah, I wish I could have rewatched the film before we did the review, but I think we covered a lot of. Do you have any more notes, Sparkz, you want to go through?
No. It's not a film that I think needs a lot of picking apart. There's in a broad sense, I think all of the performances are very well done. I think the direction is top tier from Branagh. I think his consideration for both the genre that he's playing with and the actors is much higher than it's been in the previous Poirot outings. And the pure setting of the story and the way it is allows for so much more to happen between the characters in Poirot than usually is. And that emotionality helps the movie sing in a way that the other ones just haven't been able to hit.
Do you want to use that as your final thoughts and give it a rating?
Sure. I think it's just overall really, really excellent, both as a murder mystery film and as a kind of horror light ghost story. Very much in the send up of like more older style films, the way they would do ghost story films, especially international films. I really, really like it. I think there's an old school feel to it and that works. The cast is just very good all around. So high praise. It's a 9.
9. Wow. Ben.
I'm also gonna give it a 9.
Yeah.
I I really enjoyed this movie. It was scary enough. It was intriguing enough. The mystery I thought was played very well. The whole time I'm like guessing and second guessing myself. Like at one point I think I did clock the mom, but then I thought maybe not. I clocked the nun. Maybe it's constant. It's a constant back and forth. And when the reveals start happening and everything falls into place, it's like, oh, your eyes go wide and you go, oh my god, that makes perfect sense, or that is you just seeing how the mystery plays out is very enjoyable. It's spooky enough, and it just gets you thinking and gets you feeling it. And while the ending is it's a heartbreaking ending, but then when you see Hercule go back into his groove, he gets his groove back essentially, like when he's helping that guy at the end of the film. I really enjoyed it. And this is a solid Halloween movie. This is a solid murder mystery movie. I actually want to watch this again next Halloween because I think this is a really good Halloween viewing movie. So yeah, 9. Fantastic film.
Yeah, a lot of the kind of the true test of whether or not a murder mystery film is good or not is whether or not you can watch it again. Knowing the twists, knowing the turns, knowing who the murderer is there enjoyment to still be had when you don't have to guess anymore. And I think Haunting in Venice is one of those that you would want to go back to and see again because the kind of like the how they did it is very interesting, and seeing all these character interactions and you can kind of like go back and piece together things you didn't see again. And I did thoroughly enjoy it. I knew it was a winner the moment I saw it. Um, it's such a I remember turning to Zara at the middle of the movie and being like, this is really good, like shockingly so almost. I think there's some solid like spookiness to it. There's a scene in the kitchen with like the is it blood that like makes like a letter in the wall?
No, it's the rain is pouring down, and the rain is pouring on the outside in a way where it forms the M.
Yeah, I think there's some really good stuff like that happens throughout. There's some good spookiness in the film as well. I don't think this film is scary per se, but I think there's some solid like spooks.
You made me think of
small s spooks.
You made me think of the hash slinging slasher episode of SpongeBob, because there's the part where Squidward's trying to recount the story elements that he told SpongeBob earlier, and he's like, and the walls would ooze green slime. No, wait, that's not part of it. And I was like, wait, blood on the walls, blood oozing down the walls. That didn't happen.
It's been months since I've seen this.
No. Yeah. But like, there's spooky. There is spooky stuff in it. I think one of the most effective bits, honestly, is both him chasing the child that isn't there, and also the faucet bit is very good.
Yeah.
Where he tries to turn it on, nothing happens. He gets spooked and he's like, "Oh, the water's hot now. It must have been on this whole time. My illusion." And then he talks to the kid for a while. And the kid's like, "You left the tap on." And after he thought he turned it off, and it's like, when was it on? When was it off? It's never clear.
Yeah. There's some good stuff. It's a solid small s spooky film. I kind of thought I would give it an 8 going into this, but I think I'm kind of with you guys. I think it's a 9. Yeah, it's a solid 9 out of 10, I think.
Honestly, if the mystery itself wasn't so shallow, which is fine. Again, I don't think that's a problem for this movie. But because the mystery itself is not too dense, that's the only thing that I think pulls it back a little. Like, mystery-wise, comparatively, purely on mystery, really we're talking about what Agatha Christie wrote in the original for Murder on the Orient Express. Murder on the Orient Express is a much more compounding, interesting mystery.
Yeah.
But in execution, this is a stronger film. And I think this is possibly the height of what Poirot can be. And so hopefully we can get even more of, I don't need a 10 out of 10. Just like, if you can keep it around this avenue, I'm going to be a lot happier with the future of the Poirot films. Should they continue?
I do want him to have another go, and I want it to be just as ambitious. I don't necessarily think he should do another horror, but I would like to see if he wants to give it a shot. whatever he wants to do, I'm gonna be there for it. And I hope
Yeah.
it's just as good.
I'm definitely like fully refreshed on, yeah, I'll give it another chance if this is the way we're gonna go about things. If we're just gonna get more creative and more engaged. And I do think that there's just an amount of, it's always tough, and not everybody can direct and act, especially as a lead in a film. It's not easy. I acknowledge that, and not everybody's good at doing it. And I think there's a lot to be said for Branagh being much more comfortable with what he's doing as a performer with Poirot, which allows him to think more about what movie he's making than I think where he started.
Yeah. All right. So 9s across the board, guys. Excellent. This was a lot of fun. Thank you guys so much for doing this with me.
For context, Ryan also really enjoyed it. He just didn't feel like he had a lot to say about it.
Very cool. All right, so that'll do it, guys. That's Haunting in Venice, Fake Nerd Cinephile. There's going to be a lot more cinephiles coming out in the near months now. That this is this the first thing we're recording post strikes?
Yes, but it'll actually release before other cinephiles that we recorded during the strikes.
Interesting. Well, guys, just to celebrate, this is the first recording that we have done post strikes. We're very excited that the strikes are over, especially with that it looks like everyone's gotten the fair deal that we felt they deserved, that everyone felt they deserved. Great job, everyone on the lines. So stay tuned for more things coming out. A lot more stuff is going to be coming. Be sure to check out fakenerdpodcast.com for where you can find all the links to every single one of our shows that we do, so you can keep up on the extensive stuff that is going to be coming out in the next couple of months, to see a bunch of to kind of catch up on what we've been up to during the strikes. So that'll so be sure to do that. Of course, you can check out our Patreon and our TeePublic if you'd like to support us financially. Greatly appreciate it. Once again, that's all on fakenerdpodcast.com, and it's all linked below as well. Thank you so much, guys, for listening, watching, and what have yous. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, all at Fake Nerd Podcast. I'm at BT McClure on Instagram and Twitter. I also write for AtomicGeekdom.com. Ben?
Well, I'm Ben Magnet I'm Ben Magnet 27 at Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and Threads. You could also find me writing for Old School Gamer Magazine, Fusion Gamer Magazine, GoNintendo.com, and playing Mary Frankenstein in D & Dark.
And Sparkz.
You can find me, just realizing that we put the horror logo up for this one, at Sparkz Witty on Instagram, Twitter, SPARKZ Witty.
That was by design?
No, I believe that. Now I have to orient in my brain that I'm like, this one goes in the horror intro category.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for watching and listening. Like this video, subscribe to this channel, subscribe on podcatcher of choice, rate and review wherever you get us. We greatly appreciate it. Till next time, guys, stay fake nerds.